everyone. So everyone is online? Are you good to go?
Yes, everyone is online.
All right, great. Good afternoon. Welcome to day 3 of the workshop. And please make sure microphone is muted and also the turn of the camera so you can see your face. Okay, let me briefly give you an overview of today's schedule. So today we have lectures and discussions on 2 topics. One is gender mapping, and the other is managing marine bioresources information. Gender mapping will be presented by experts from ISA, and lecture for management of bioresource information will be given by expert in MAVIC. So, and also before the end of today's program, I will assign action plan groups. There will be 2 groups for action plan presentation on Friday. So please email me which group you want to participate by the end of second lecture today. Then I'll split your participants into 2 groups based on your preference. But in case the groups are very uneven, then I will redistribute group members based on your work expertise and knowledge. Okay, then now why don't we move on to today's first lecture? Dr. Sonakshi Mishra from ISA will give us a lecture on gender mapping, and also Dr. Christy McQuaid from University of Plymouth will be also sharing her works. And Dr. McQuaid is a recent ISA Secretary General's awardee. So please welcome Dr. Sonakshi Mishra for her lecture.
Thank you, Dr. Yang. Am I audible to everyone? Can you hear me? Okay, excellent. Thank you so much. And I look forward to today's session. And I would just like to convey the apologies from Dr. Kirsty McQuaid, who will not be able to unfortunately join us live. However, she has sent her presentation in a pre-recorded form, which I will play on behalf of her after my presentation. So I'll try to now share my screen. Are you able to see it?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. Is it full screen? Because for me it is.
Yeah,
is it fine?
It is full screen, yes, you're fine.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so good afternoon to everyone in Fiji, and it's a bit late here where I am. It's I'm currently in the UK and it's 2 in the morning. So in case I make some mistakes, please apologize. The late night mistakes that may come. I'm Sonakshi Mishra and I work as a program management officer at the International Seabed Authority. You have already heard from my colleague, Dr. Luciana, yesterday. So I am a marine biogeochemist by training, and I'm currently working on the capacity development aspects at the International Seabed Authority. And I will be speaking about the work that ISA has been doing to support the participation of women in marine scientific research, in particular in deep sea science. And I would be talking about the project, the Women in Deep Sea Research Project, where we have partnered with MAVIC, and the studies and the progress that we have done under it. So as an outline of my presentation, I will briefly touch upon the mandate of ISA, specifically related to capacity development. I understand that you've already heard a bit about ISA's background and the mandate from my colleague yesterday. And then I would go on to give you a short overview on the different kind of initiatives and activities that are being done by ISA to support, in general, capacity development, and to highlight from how we try to integrate and mainstream the gender perspective into all our actions. And then I would focus on the most important project that we do, which is to take a very holistic approach to support women's participation in marine scientific research, and we partnered with NABIC, and this is and today's lecture is a reflection of that partnership that we have done to support participation of women in marine scientific research. And then the last part of the presentation will focus on presenting some of the key results that we have obtained through a study that we did under the Women in Deep Sea Research Project. So it was launched, it was published this year in June at the UN Ocean Conference, and it focuses specifically on least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states. And we will come to that in detail shortly. So just to give you an idea about how ISA is placed here, and we have mandated under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea to regulate the marine resource, the seabed resources in the international area, and while doing so, ensuring effective protection of the marine environment. And also there are elements, key integral elements of capacity development related to the mandate, which transpires through 4 areas. One is to ensure that activities and efforts are taken to facilitate effective participation of developing states in all activities. Technology transfer to ensure protection of the marine environment, and to promote and encourage marine scientific research. So most of our capacity development initiatives usually touch upon one of these 4 elements or areas. So to give you a different overview of the different kinds of initiatives that we take, we have several programs. One is the contractors training program, which is one of its kind, where the contractors of ISA are obliged under the contract to provide training, practical training, as well as theoretical trainings for nationals from developing states. And this is a regular activity, and a lot of nationals from different developing countries benefit from this training. Then we have an endowment fund for marine scientific research, which has now been revised into different kind of fund to support different kinds of marine scientific research and other capacity development activities. We also have regularly internships focusing either on scientific work or on legal aspects of the authority. We also provide information workshops, often upon request by member states. And the most recent one was done last year, where we provided some national workshops for Indonesia. Apart from that, there is a recently established joint training resource center with China, which provides also trainings related to different aspects and areas of expertise of the International Seabed Authority. And then lastly, but not least, we have a range of activities within the umbrella of voluntary commitments that the ISA has made at the UN Ocean Conference. Some of you may be aware of the 2022 UN Ocean Conference that took place this year. The last one was in 2017, and entities, including countries, international organizations, NGOs, can register voluntary commitments on different areas to support the SDG 14, with the Sustainable Development Goal 14, which is to protect life underwater. So we have a range of voluntary commitments that we have registered, and one of them is dedicated entirely to supporting women in marine scientific research, and to that we will come shortly. Apart from the different capacity development initiatives that the ISA is doing based on the decision that was taken by its assembly, we also have an action plan for marine scientific research to support the UN Decade of Ocean Science. And it has 6 strategic areas, out of which one focuses again on developing the scientific capacity in developing states. So now that I gave you an overview of the different capacity development activities that we do and the background, this is just to show you how we continuously try to ensure that we maintain gender equality in all our initiatives. As you can see, we almost have an equal participation of women in all of our training, all of our capacity development initiatives. And one of the project that we were speaking about is the Women in Deep Sea Research project. It is basically entirely dedicated to support women in marine science, specifically deep sea science, because it comes closer to the mandate of ISA. And there are different continuous ongoing activities that are taking place. The other one is the Secretary General Excellence Award for Deep Sea Research. The awardee, the most recent awardee is Dr. Kirsty McQuaid, from who you will be hearing after my presentation, is yet another activity where we try to support young researchers who doing excellent work in deep sea biology or related fields. So now, to come to the Women in Deep Sea Research project, like I mentioned, so the main project that ISA does to do different kinds of activities to support gender mainstreaming and deep sea research is the Women in Deep Sea Research project. So this builds on this voluntary commitment that I was talking about. In 2017 at the UN Ocean Conference, ISA registered a voluntary commitment to support and to enhance the participation and leadership of women in marine scientific research. So it stems from that voluntary commitment in 2017. This commitment has then gone forward and has been built into a project in partnership with the UN Office of the High Representative for the Least Developed Countries, the Landlocked Developing Countries, and the Small Island Developing States, the UN OHRLLS. It was launched last year to celebrate on the occasion of the International Women's Day. And we have partnered with a range of governments, international and regional organizations, industry and academia, and MABIC is one of our excellent partners on this project. So the project focuses on 4 key areas. One is policy development. The second is capacity development. The third is sustainable partnerships. And then last but not the least, outreach and communication. So all the activities that we do usually covers one of these 4 areas. And going forward, the first so today we will be focusing on the activities that has been done in the first area of focus, which is policy development. So to support policy development, we take a 2-stage approach. One is to, of course, increase awareness and high-level political support from leaders and decision makers on the importance of supporting women's participation in deep sea research. And second, as you may all know, of course, to have more informed policy and to have that awareness, we need better data. We need more data. While many of us, we know that there are a lot of challenges to overcome, and a lot of work is required to ensure women's participation. However, we need more reliable and more available data to support this, because only then we can actually set the foundation for policy support for capacity development initiatives. To mobilize support on an international and regional level, we need more data. So one of our first activities actually focused on that. And this led to an activity where we wanted to do the gender mapping of the deep sea research sector to see what is the current status of the sector, how do women fare in the sector, and it provides a foundational database on the current status of the women in deep sea research. And we have mainly focused on, as I said, with the least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states. And then to also identify, so once we are able to quantify that baseline on how and what is the current situation, in case there are challenges, what are those challenges? What are the barriers that may cause impediments to a better participation by women in these countries in the deep sea research? And this is the exercise that was conducted over a year, last year, and over several almost 8 to 9 months. And we worked with 23 countries. 4 of them were least developed countries, 5 of them were landlocked developing countries, and 14 of them were small island developing states. And we produced this report called Empowering Women from LDCs, LLDCs, and SIDS in Deep Sea Research. You can see the link to the full report here. I would highly recommend you to have a look at it. And this was published, this was launched this year in June 2022 at the UN Ocean Conference. And I would be now showing you, I would be touching briefly upon some of the highlights or some of the key outcomes of this report, like to give you a background of the study, what we did and what was the outcome. And of course, I would invite you to have a look at the full report in detail when you have the time to support the work that you're doing. So to start with, the first step would be when we want to assess what is the current status of the deep sea research in terms of gender. So when we want to do the gender mapping of the sector, first we needed to define what is our framework of deep sea research. So in our study, because we are dealing with least developed countries, we're dealing with landlocked developing countries who don't even have a sea who don't have a coastline, and small island developing states, and globally, with the global coverage, we'll come to it. So, and deep sea research, as you know, it's a super specialized segment of marine scientific research. So of course, in order to go there, you have to have the basic foundations, and then you specialize accordingly. So we had to identify relatable fields that can come into the definition of deep sea research. And some of the segments of deep sea research can also be very expensive and technologically advanced, and may not be direct capacity, might not be there in some countries. So then we had to identify proxies. And of course, in case of landlocked countries where they don't have a maritime expertise, we would have to then identify proxy fields or to identify fields of studies where the skills are transferable to deep sea research. So somebody who has studied petroleum geochemistry, land-based geochemistry, can then take that geochemistry expertise to marine scientific research in the future, should the need be. Or engineering is a cross-sectoral transferable skill that can be applied with different specialties. So this is just to give you an overview of the different research fields, like the studies that we took. Of course, we also covered different activities, so when we say deep sea research, we covered the educational part of it, but also the activities part of it, the different kinds of work, whether it's maritime, whether it's land-based mining, whether it's offshore engineering, so fisheries and aquaculture. So all of these were combined, was grouped into one, and then we started the survey. That was the idea, to take this and then start the survey. So the next step was the global coverage. So the idea was to, of course, include as many countries as possible. So we approached almost 44. We wanted to make sure that the pool of the countries that we are assessing represents all categories. We have a representation from all the regions. We should from Africa, from Asia Pacific, Latin America, and the Caribbean, to also make sure that we have the different kinds of income level groups also reflected. So from lower to all the way to high income countries were included in the study. And of course, the three fundamental categories of countries to have SIDS and LLDCs and LDCs. So we did manage to get a very nice representation of the different kinds of countries. So we got response and partnership from 23 of the countries that out of the 44 we had requested, who participated in the survey throughout. And the survey was done at 3 levels, which I will come to shortly. So we did a survey at the national level, at institutional levels, and also at individual levels. So to ensure that we have captured from a bigger picture to a really personal and individual perspective of the women scientists and the researchers who are working there. So as you can see, Fiji was one of the participating countries, and we've covered all the regions, so from Bangladesh, Belize, Botswana, Cook Islands, Fiji, Jamaica to Trinidad and Tobago in the Latin America and the Caribbean region. So here's the list that you can see. So now to start the design of the survey. So we saw our definition of the area of coverage, we saw the global coverage, and then the study was designed around 15 indicators. So there were three segments of the study we did. One was the gender mapping itself, to quantify, to get a baseline of what is the current scenario of women and men's participation in the different fields and the activities related to deep sea research that we talked about. So that, as you can see, was covered through national and institutional surveys. So just to, because this information has to come from a higher level to see, okay, how many people are employed in your country, how many people are employed in your institution, how many of them are women, how many of them are not women, how many of them are leaders, how many of them are not. So we'll come to that. So all of these details you will of course find in the full report. So just to give you an idea. So the mapping at the national and the institutional level was done through 7 indicators. So one is the contribution. By that we mean the budgetary contribution, how much of the budget that the country is dedicated. Then to scan the employment demographics, how does the different employment scenes look like, what kind of people, like how many men and women, what kind of contract, what kind of positions they hold, what level of career progression they are at. So then we also looked at the policies. So what kind of national and institutional policies do they have to support participation of women? And then of course, going back to education and then the funding for education, then to see how easily they are able to transition into employment after their studies. And once they have entered the career, how do they progress and how do they maintain and how do they proceed to leadership stages? Because as the 3 stages of the career, right? First, from education to entering the first set of transition, and then to be able to maintain that, and then eventually climb up to leadership positions. And some of you might be aware of this leaky pipeline effect, where a lot of women are educated and are at equal level like men in education, but then as and when the career progresses, you have fewer and fewer women. So to identify if we have a similar effect like that, and what level. So then the next segment of the study was to identify those barriers. So once we have an idea on the quantification of how do men and women fare in deep sea research, so what could be these barriers that some of the women or even men might face in participating and maintaining a career in deep sea research related activities that we had looked at. So this was done through, again, 8 indicators. And this was done through individual surveys, so and some interviews directly with the survey respondents. So we looked at their personal demographics, their career choices, the employment environment, career progression and leadership, funding, work-life balance, social norms and attitudes, and also, of course, discrimination and harassment. So we devised questions around these indicators to these survey respondents to identify the different kinds of barriers that might be that cause an impediment. And of course, throughout the individual survey, the analysis was done in such a way that we maintained anonymity so that you cannot identify personally who those persons are, to make sure that we got an open and transparent responses from these survey respondents. So that was the second part. And the last segment that we focused on was to select, as we said, we had 23 countries, and then we selected 13 countries out of it, each 4 to 5 from each category, LDCL, LDCs, and SIDS. And Fiji was also one of the countries. And we did a policy scan to have a look at what kind of gender provisions have they provided in their constitution, in their sectoral policies, and to see what kind of policy support is provided to that can help and increase the participation of women in these highly emerging and technologically advanced fields. So this is the work that we did, and we were very pleased with the response. So we got 22 responses at national level. We got 52 institutions from these 23 countries participated in the survey. So from different sectors, from industry, government, and public, they're mostly and academic, but also non-profit institutions. And then we had 128 individuals who participated in the survey from these 23 countries, and 105 of them were women and 23 of them were men. And the data that has come out has been presented in a way to make sure that we are reflecting that balance between the different kinds of respondents. And again, you can find the further details in the report when you have a look at it. So going back to some of the key findings of this report, apologies for too much of text, but I thought this would help you to have a look at it, and then you can go to the report and see the plots and then to understand the analysis background and everything. So what we saw, so I would divide the key findings based on these three things that we did, right? We had these gender mapping where we tried to analyze the questions were devised around identifying these 7 indicators, then the barrier analysis and the policy scan. So to sum it up in an overall perspective, what we saw is that in terms of national contributions, so there was not much data available in terms of identifying budgetary allocations of the country. So at least with the set of countries we were dealing with, was not very easy to identify how there was not much data on the budgetary allocation, so we couldn't really come to a conclusion on that. But what we did find in terms of the numbers and the quantification is what we did see is most of the women in our survey were holding temporary and contractual positions, which are more precarious and uncertain compared to permanent positions, where more men were reported to hold more permanent positions, which indicated that they have a more secure and a more stable career compared to women, who are kind of stuck within these contractual positions. So overall, when we received the employment data from these countries and the institutions, we saw that mostly more men were employed at all stages, at entry, mid, and higher level. And also when it came to hiring, when we were analyzing how many, how was the hiring trends in the last 1 or 2 years, and you could see that also the recent hirings were also. So there were a lot of men, but of women, but of course, men always fared slightly more. More men have been given opportunities to participate at sea work, which is very essential for a deep sea research career. And in marine science in general, if you want to go into that field, you need a lot of field experience. So we could see that they had less. When we did an analysis of the number of research grants, you saw that less women have gotten research grants compared to men. When we tried to identify at the institutional level to see how many of their scientists and staff have been lead or co-authors, you saw that more men have published as lead and co-authors compared to women who might be just, not the main authors. And of course, so these are the different indicators. Basically, you have the publishing papers is very essential to have a good scientific career, attending and presenting in conferences, receiving promotion, and you see that in all of these categories, we see that women have less, as anticipated, of course, but it was good to see the numbers and to have that evidence that this is the case. Of course, most institutions were headed by men. There were very few institutions where the head of the institution was a woman. And the different kinds of leadership and managerial positions like board of directors and governing councils, or when they were invited to ministerial committees, it was mainly men who were invited. So you could see that at least from a national and an institutional perspective, there was evidence that women are not really at the highest leadership level. Of course, there was a lot of participation. You see that there were a lot of numbers. There many women were in the field, but when it came to leadership positions, you saw that they were not up to the mark as with men, and it was sad to see, but also at the same time, it was good to have that evidence and see, okay, this is the case on the ground. So the second part was then based on the individual responses. So the ones I showed, like one is to get, we had different sets of questions for the national and institutional. And then, of course, we did the analysis based on these 128 participants, when we directly spoke to them as an individual, as a professional, as a woman scientist, or as a student who's studying. And then we tried to analyze what their responses were. So to summarize a bit, of course, the report has much more in detail the experiences that were captured by them, and I would welcome you to have a look at it and see if you identify with it, or if you know people who identify with it. So what we did see is that a lot of women who participated, more women in the, so of course, overall you have more women who participated in the survey compared to men. But when you compare those 108 women and those 23 men, you see that more women have declined opportunities to go and work abroad because they had either financial issues, or they had mainly gender-related issues, because there was childcare, care for dependents, care for parents, cultural expectations and gender norms, and safety and pregnancy. So a lot of women reported these as one of the major reasons for declining opportunities to study abroad. And men, of course, report a bit differently on why they had to decline opportunities. So I would welcome you to come and have a look how the different reporting has taken place. So the other thing that you also see is when we did an analysis of the parental leave distribution, you see that deep sea research, of course, it is not the only field, and it is probably a problem that happens in most fields. But it is a very international and technically demanding field, and you need to be able to travel, you need to be able to do field work. So if you do not have, so when men are not entitled to parental leave and are not able to distribute those early phases of child rearing, then it becomes, so the women kind of automatically have to step down, because there is no option for men to take leave, even if they would want to, for example. So that, for example, plays a role why it is difficult for women to then, and then they lose that continuity to then move on, and there's a loss, which is of course a case with everything, almost every sector, as we know. And then the other thing what we saw was quite interesting is almost half of those 128 women from all these countries have reported they have felt discriminated at work, mainly based on gender or based on age. So their perception was their discrimination was mainly gender-based or age-based. And both of them is difficult, because as we see, if you lose those several years during child rearing phase and childcare phase, then of course you're relatively, so there is a factor of age, or, or the other way around, you might be young, and then, most of the leadership positions are held by men, and there is an age gap or related to gender. So most of them across all countries, all regions reported similarly. And of these 128 women, over 15% have reported to have faced harassment at work, at the stage of studying, at early stages of career. And most commonly experienced form of harassment that was reported was sexual harassment. And but more than 15%, like almost 30% of the women, however, reported that they were, so not direct or not severe sexual harassment, but this indirect harassment of unwanted leers and sexual comments and so at workplace. So there were different. So overall, 30% of women have basically faced some sort of discrimination and harassment at work. So that was also very notable to see in the survey, and unfortunate. And students, so these are the first points are mainly by women professionals and scientists who have already entered the field or have had worked in the past or are currently working. And when we had captured some information on students, because that is also an interesting stage of career, right, where you haven't yet started working, but you're on the way, you're still at the career choice phase. So they said that, for example, they face a different kind of difficulty where they feel that they lack career guidance and internship opportunities. They do not have enough financial capacity to go to fieldwork. And they feel that a lot of these highly technical disciplines are very male dominated, and therefore they might not be comfortable to take it or just somehow go along the norm and not take it. Overall, gender, irrespective of the gender issues and the gender norms, of course, there is an underlying problem, which is the lack of financial and institutional and human capacity, institutional in the sense of infrastructure, access to board, to ships, and then to laboratories, etc., which is also a challenge for having a deep sea research related career for both men and women in this case, because it's a common problem across all genders. So these were some of the findings of the barriers. These are just a few points which I've highlighted, and of course there's much more detailed. And some of the interviews, for example, the anonymous interviews, they will give a more better personal example of what these barriers are and how they impact the career and the psychology of the women who work in these fields. So that would be definitely something worth looking at. So this last part of the third part that we discussed about this report was doing this policy scan, right? Because we all know there is an issue. I think there is a lot of currently at the global level, a lot of support and mobilization does take place in recognition of the challenges faced by women. So we wanted to understand, okay, how do the policies in these countries and institutions look like? And what was very interesting is to see that almost all of the 23 countries in their constitution recognize and address gender-related issues. However, when you start to trickle down, you see that in the sectoral policies, so at a high level, of course, you have, the constitution addresses it, you have these national policies and visions and strategies, which speaks about gender equality in varying degrees. But when you look at, like sector specific policies, whether it is related to mining or to fisheries, and when you look at the laws and then the policies of these sectors, you don't really find specific clauses or paragraphs that is addressing gender aspects in it. So that was very interesting to see that missing, that at the sectoral level. And that is, of course, in terms of the activity, direct sectoral. The other one is, of course, deep sea research science is related to ocean science, which is then, of course, related to education. So we scan the education policies of these countries. And what you see is that, of course, STEM, the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, the STEM fields have been given a lot of importance in many of the education policies, but there is no specific gender-related element, especially related to ocean science in these fields. So you have an overall STEM approach in recognized in some countries, but there is this when you're narrowing it down, you see that it kind of loses the concrete elements of it. And at the institutional level, we also wanted to see, okay, what kind of policies and frameworks do you have in support, which, if not completely address all issues, at least set the groundwork to start somewhere to support and address these barriers. And you see that they actually have a lot of institutions in varying degrees from different countries reported, one or the other policy provision, whether it's related to health plans or flexible working conditions, anti-harassment, and equal pay. So there are different elements of the gender aspect that are covered in a very siloed way, but most of the institutions, like 90% of the institutions, did not have like a whole holistic gender related approach, which we see is the case. If you look at the long list of barriers identified by women, you can see that you would actually need a much more holistic approach because there are many layers of issues that are involved in it. And so there were not that many. There were few, I think like 2 or 3 institutions may have had like a holistic approach, but most of them did not. And what was even more notable is when we had a look at these different kinds of policies, like, working flexible hours, parental leave, etc., you saw that like child care support policies were the least common among all the institutional policies. It was one of the least reported policies that was there, although in the interviews and in the surveys, it was actually identified as a very important barrier. So these are the different kinds of policy level analysis that we found. So to summarize all these findings, then the next step was to identify what could be the recommendations, what could we do to address. Okay, so we knew that there would have been a challenge. So this was through these studies, through these different 3 segments of the studies we found the evidence, what is the current status, what are the different problems, where is the policy gap. And the next step was to identify how we could contribute to address some of those issues. And when we synthesized all the findings through the study, you saw that there were actually 4, broadly speaking, 4 areas where there were key gaps and where we thought recommendations could be made. One is, of course, data. So as we saw, there were still data missing. Gender disaggregated data was missing in a lot of levels, especially national level. Budgetary data were missing. How much of the budget contributions goes into deep sea research, and then of course into gender related aspects. So a lot of work could be done in the data aspect. For example, deep sea research related activities and fields could be integrated into international standardized classifications. National offices or institutional statistics could include gender disaggregated data because that eventually lays the foundation for policies and initiatives, targeted initiatives at the end of the day. So that was one area. The second area was capacity. So I actually think I have one more page. Yeah. Okay. So these are the main challenges. So the paragraphs that are around these 4 areas are the highlighting, like, if we were to just highlight some key gaps. So one is, of course, lack of gender disaggregated data and budgetary data. So we need work in the data segment. And as I said, so governments, institutions, companies could promote standardization of gender disaggregated data within their respective mandates. So, companies and institutions should, because it was very difficult to get gender disaggregated data. So if it would be available already at institutional level, it helps these kinds of studies and analysis much easier, so we can actually identify solutions much easier. Second would be to integrate these highly emerging and technical fields into the international classification systems. The second part is, of course, capacity. And as we saw before, some of the key barriers and challenges that was identified by the survey respondents was financial, institutional, and human capacities. and that is why we need more efforts in capacity development initiatives. So some of the recommendations would be to encourage governments to increase budgetary allocation and to include gender considerations in the expenditure. For organizations like ISA and partner organizations, regional organizations, academic institutions, MABIC is of course doing a great job here, and governments, and to come together and to support, to collaborate on capacity development initiatives to promote participation of women in deep sea research. So the other thing could be when it comes to international conferences or international meetings and workshops, governments and institutions could promote the participation of women in these fields. An organization like ISA, we could work with member states to promote maybe paid internships or other kinds of activities to help. We already have a range of activities. We could further the range of activities to promote the participation of women. And what we are already trying to do now is this contractor training program that I spoke about. We're trying to see 50% of the placements in these contractor trainings can be reserved for women to make sure that, we are having, to ensuring that we have a gender equality in the beneficiaries of these capacity building activities. The third main area is the systemic barriers, which I think is the most difficult segment to address because these are very, very deep-rooted systemic issues, and you need a much more larger societal shift and systematic shift to address these issues, where you see that more than half of the women have turned down opportunities for career growth because of gender-related reasons and a list of other disadvantages. So we would need to identify innovative approaches to start addressing those issues. For example, at least we could start by addressing and acknowledging the issues. Governments and institutions, for example, we could take measures to have policies related to the issues that have been identified in this report that act as impediments, to address sexual harassment, to promote parental leave, to manage career breaks, and to re-entry mechanisms for those who have to take a break. Flexible working hour, access to childcare is a key issue. So there are a lot of these systemic issues, a lot of cultural issues that need to be addressed. And also what other thing could be is different regions have also different social and cultural elements. So I think while this was a very global and a very large, it hasn't zoomed into each region in its own. So the Pacific might have its own approach, whereas the African region might have its own. So perhaps such analysis and studies can be done at a more regional level to identify that region or local specific issues and solutions to have because this needs a lot of innovative approach. And so these could be done, and ministries and government departments could work to promote, integrate some gender-specific elements to address these barriers in their sectoral policies and action plans. So when Ministry of Fisheries comes up with action plans and policies, for example, they could identify more gender-specific issues and solutions to that in the action plans. And of course, all organizations and companies should take as much measures and efforts as possible to ensure anti-sexual harassment framework and policies are in place and to protect women, especially when they are on board in scientific vessels for longer periods of time. So those kinds of approaches need to be taken care of. And the fourth main area, which was leadership opportunities. We do see that, one, they have less access to leadership opportunities in terms of external opportunities. Then, of course, there are these systemic barriers that prohibit them from continuing and going to leadership positions. So we would need a lot of support. So women are underrepresented virtually in every single leadership position analysis that we have done in this report. So we would need efforts, and two of the recommendations that the report has identified is international collaboration, so ISA and other organizations to support early career mentoring. I think mentoring and role models can play a big role in shaping young girls and students into the career choice, but also those who are already in the field to have mentoring and access to network and an international level from other successful scientists would take a long way in supporting those. So I think, yeah, mentorship and networking would be some of the key leadership opportunities that can really help to address some of these issues. So I think that with that we come to the end of the findings of the report. And of course, I would welcome you to have a look at the report, to look at the different indicators and how they've analyzed the data that was collected. Perhaps that helps you in your own action plans and the work that you do. And, you know, like maybe you can relate to some of the gaps that you may have identified within your institution or your experience or area of work, and then to see how that can be done. So I think with that, I would end my presentation and I would invite Kirsty McQuaid to speak about her. She's a deep sea biologist. We will hear from her how she ended up being a scientist in deep sea biology and her experiences and her recommendations. Thank you very much. So what I will do is I will take a few seconds and I will share Kirsty's recording.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so sorry that I couldn't be here with you today to discuss this.
Are you able to hear it?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so sorry that I couldn't be here with you today to discuss this really interesting topic in person, but I hope that I can still provide some valuable input to these really important discussions. My name is Kirsty McQuaid. I'm a deep sea benthic ecologist from South Africa, and I currently work as a postdoctoral research fellow at the South African National Biodiversity Institute and the University of Plymouth. I was first introduced to the sea, like many people, by my parents. My father's a marine biologist, and he would take us down to the beach and we would play and look in the rock pools. I'm the little candy-striped blonde blob in the corner of your screen there. So just in terms of how I got to become a deep sea benthic ecologist, for my undergraduate, I did a biology degree. We couldn't specialize at my university in marine biology, but I then went on to do an honors degree in marine biology and then a master's in applied marine science. After this, I took some time out because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, like many young people, and I did an internship at the South African National Biodiversity Institute. And here I met a really incredible woman who does research in the deep sea and in offshore environments, called Professor Kerry Sink, who some of you may know. And she really encouraged me to pursue, when a PhD topic came up that I was interested in, to pursue applying for this. And so I did. And I was successful in my application. And so I moved to the UK to do a PhD in deep sea ecology with another incredible woman and deep sea researcher called Professor Kerry Howell. And so, like many people from developing nations and from other nations, I had to move abroad to do my PhD, particularly in South Africa and many African nations and developing nations. We lack the expertise as well as the infrastructure and the equipment to be able to do deep sea studies, and particularly PhDs, in my home country. And so I moved abroad to do that. And so, as I said, I currently work as a postdoc fellow. My work now is mainly focused on areas beyond national jurisdiction. I also do some work within the South African EEZ. I mainly work on habitat mapping and habitat classification and marine spatial planning to support the management of human activities in the deep sea. But I also work on benthic ecology, and so image analysis, like these beautiful images that you can see here. And so the main motivation really for me behind my work in the deep sea is around wanting to make a difference. And so I get really motivated by seeing the impact of my work, and this is a key driver for me. And over the years, I've had many incredible and amazing opportunities, which have had a really positive experiences. And I think one of these, which many deep sea researchers feel, is just this immense privilege at being able to work in a deep sea environment. And so we are often being able to see new places, often for the first time, that other people haven't seen before, and we're discovering new species. So it's a really incredible space to be in. And one of the key challenges in my journey so far, I guess I would say, is like many other people, having to go abroad, coming from a developing nation, lacking expertise and infrastructure to do deep sea research, was having to move abroad to do my PhD. I was asked to speak a little bit on my personal experience and what has helped me to succeed in my profession so far. I'm an early career researcher, so I have a very long road ahead of me. But these are just a couple of the things that I thought of that were really important in my journey. And I would say the key one to this was having very supportive mentors, or still having very supportive mentors and colleagues. And I think this is a really important point for this current discussion, because those mentors have all been women. So the two most important mentors that I have had who've supported me on my journey so far are these incredible female deep sea researchers who I did my PhD and my internship with. And I think that that really just demonstrates the importance of having female leaders in this field to inspire and to support the next generation of deep sea researchers. I've also had some really amazing opportunities throughout, my path so far, and I think a key thing is saying yes to those opportunities. We often overload ourselves, but I think, being able and willing to jump into these opportunities that are presented to us and to get out of my comfort zone and just grasp them with both hands has led on to further opportunities, and so this has been really important. The third thing I would say is never underestimate the importance of networking. And I've come to realize that this isn't, can just be the importance of being in a room and becoming familiar with people from all sorts of different spheres. So not just academia, but building personal connections with people outside of this, like in government, international organizations, and industry. So just showing up and being present has been really important. And then finally, I guess I would say, is doing something that you enjoy will inevitably lead to more success. As you are relaxed, you're more interested and you're more engaged and comfortable. And so I think pursuing things that you are really interested in and enjoy is important. So I am going to take a bit of time now to speak about experiences that I've had where I resonate with the outputs of the ISA Women in Deep Sea Research Gender Report and their findings on the key challenges and recommendations. And I think firstly, in order to speak on my experience of this, I have to acknowledge that my experiences are from the position of a white woman, from a relatively high income background for a South African, despite being from a developing nation, and also from a field that has fairly good representation of female leaders. So marine biology has quite a high number of women compared to fields like marine engineering or geology. There's still major gender disparity, definitely, but it's less pronounced than in those fields. And so my experience has come from a place of relative privilege, I would say, when compared to many other groups of women, particularly from marginalized communities. I'm also at an early stage of my career, and so I haven't yet started a family, and there are many issues that I've not yet experienced firsthand, but which I may have witnessed from the sidelines. So as I touched on a moment ago, there are many incredible women in senior positions in deep sea research, but proportionally speaking, there are still fewer than men. And I've noticed that this is particularly pronounced when going to sea. And when looking at keynote speakers at events or heads of departments and institutes or on decision-making bodies. And so certainly noticed low representation or lower representation of women in these spaces. Secondly, as I said, I've not yet had children, and so childcare support isn't something that I have personally needed yet, but I certainly witnessed friends and colleagues who have been in this position and have battled with this. And I can definitely relate to worries about parental leave when wanting to start a family, and particularly while working on short fixed-term contracts, which is all too common for women at this stage of our careers. Thirdly, I wanted to touch on the aspects of harassment and antisocial behavior, which I think sadly as women we are all too familiar with. This is something we experience daily, and it's not limited to our time in the workplace, but certainly women receive unwanted experience in attention, pardon me, at work, and particularly from my experience, this has occurred while working at sea or on research cruises and in the field. And then finally, I wanted to speak about something which is perhaps less obvious and is experienced in more subtle ways, and that is the almost unconscious bias about perceptions about women and their interests and their capabilities, which often limit opportunities for women, particularly when considering practical skills and training. And so this is far less about formal training opportunities and more about the subtle ways in which women's roles in a team are defined based on preconceived ideas and biases. So for example, when carrying out hands-on work in the field or at sea, leaders in a team will often turn to male participants to ask them or show them how to do something. And as this is repeated over time, it has a compounding effect where female participants feel less confident and less comfortable with practical aspects, so they are less likely to volunteer or put themselves forward, and so in turn gain fewer skills, and so the cycle perpetuates itself. And so this moves me on to talk about the recommendations. This report does a really excellent job of proposing key recommendations to ensure that women are afforded equal opportunities to participate and progress, in deep sea research. And I just want to highlight several which really resonated with me. I think the key area where progress is needed is in addressing systemic barriers to participation of women. And without these measures to address this, other efforts to build capacity will be less successful, inevitably. And so implementation of measures to address harassment and to provide childcare support and other issues related to family life, and to shift the cultural perceptions of the appropriateness of women in these fields and in these roles will really need to be addressed in order to facilitate progress in these issues. And then mentoring and leadership training opportunities and support will be really important to support women who are already in the field and are looking to progress to the next stage, and also for new generations of deep sea women researchers. And then finally, I think we need to protect and encourage and support women in deep sea research, particularly while at sea and in the field. I think the ISA is doing an excellent job of starting this conversation and identifying where there are specific needs, and hopefully from this will flow a series of activities and initiatives that will allow us to see some real progress in this issue. And so I'll finish there and wish you all the best for fruitful discussions during this really important training. And hopefully this is just the beginning of the conversation. Thank you very much.
So that's it from myself and Kirsty. Over to you, Dr.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Sonakshi. Thank you again for giving us a lecture this year, as you did last year. I'm very impressed with how well balanced is the IS development program in terms of gender equity, and also acknowledge IS's contribution to empowering women's leadership and capacity building. In addition, I really thank Dr. McQuaid for sharing her journey into deep sea research and sharing a story, how important it is to have female leaders and mentors. Okay, now we will, can you guys hear me? Okay, now we'll be discussing gender mapping. Again, Dr. Sonakshi Mishra facilitates Q&A sessions. So this time I expect a lot of questions because you will need to include how to enhance and implement gender balance issues while developing an action plan. So if you have any question, please click the response button in the menu at the bottom of Zoom and click raise your hand button so we can know who's asking the question. Don't be shy this time. This is the right time you ask a question for the gender mapping. Who's take the lead? Okay. So Dr. Sonakshi, I have a question. What's the most difficult issues especially in developing country in terms of gender imbalance?
Thank you, Dr. Yang. I think that's a very difficult question, and it will depend a lot, I think, on the region, on the sector that we are talking about. And if we were to just focus on marine science and ocean science, as we said, at least some of the issues that we have tried to identify through our survey is that one is a common issue that cuts across all genders or all communities is, of course, the lack of infrastructure and financial resources. In some cases, lack of employment opportunities. And because some of these fields can be very resource intensive and highly technical. But of course, apart from those, there are also the more gender-specific norms, which are the cultural norms and the social norms. And as we said, like some of the systemic barriers, I think, which is probably one of the most reported reasons, and which are just related to the way we work and the lack of provisions or measures that have that are there to address those. Like there is the issue of childcare. There is the issue of the harassment and discrimination, and like Kirsty talked about, these unconscious prejudices and biases, these subtle forms of disadvantage where which build and have compounding effects later, when you kind of like don't take them serious, because some of the respondents actually said they feel that they are not taken seriously, or they don't feel rewarded for their work, or their capabilities are not looked through the same lens as of their male counterparts. So I think there are a lot of these both conscious and also sort of subconscious barriers that are there. And in one of the interviews, for example, one of the women reported how she does manage to do the job and she's maintaining it, but she feels very demotivated and sort of like defeated psychologically to continue working. So I think there is a very wide range of issues depending on the region, the sector, the stage of life that you are in. But we do see that across all stages, whether it's a student or it's early career or even later stage, so it really depends on that. And I think like I'm very sure there is a wealth of experience sitting in the room itself who've made their own experiences and who've made their own judgments and analysis throughout their experience. So I think there's no one answer to this question, but I would really think that like it really depends on the social norms and everything. And yeah, that's what I would say. But I'm very sure there are a lot of answers that are already sitting in that room.
And also one of my question is, sometimes it's really difficult to encourage the people to speak up because sometimes they are too busy and sometimes they don't want to speak up. They don't want to just, tell their story. So I was just wondering how to entice to bring up their unspoken words in terms of these issues. Do you have any thought?
I think what we have tried to start here is, of course, like only a slight small effort, and then let's just start the discussion. So, but I think it's true. So what we have at least tried to do in this report, I can say from that perspective, we tried to. Because it was when you do the survey, you want to maintain the anonymity of it, so if you look at the full report, you will actually hear the personal stories without knowing who the person is, which country it is, because it's a small set of people in a small set of countries. And so we have to maintain anonymity and data integrity when we come to do these things. But I think things like this, like surveys, well-designed surveys and studies, and that takes into consideration different and social and aspects and to identify what the problems are. And I think a lot of information will come out of it. And so I think it's a very interesting perspective. While we are all working in the field of science, and then myself, I'm not a social scientist. I have also been trained in marine science. So I think in the world where we live in, integrating social science and social scientific aspects to understand also our sectors, it's very important. So I think that would be a good interdisciplinary approach to have a look at it, and it's a small step towards what we are trying to identify here.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing your thought. I think I also agree that well-designed survey is very important. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice. Okay, I've done the ice-breaking part, so now it's your turn to ask your question. All right. Don't be shy.
I think you can also just share the questions I had in the last year. We had, I think there was not, I don't think I know any more than you know. And in many cases, you might be knowing much more than I would, because I think this is a very subjective experience, and each of you might have made your own experience, so I think this is, I would see this more as an exchange of information and experiences rather than, asking me, because
I see.
I think it really comes down to basically to sharing and your own perspectives. It's more of an exchange, I would say. So I'm also happy to hear your inputs, and to see what experiences you have, or where where would you want to start to work? Because, you know, our recommendations when this report, for example, comes from the perspective where we are standing, but you might have your own perspective, your own position. So it would be very interesting to hear your experiences and what you would want to start to address these issues, because I think all of us, we face one or the other of these problems, which I'm sure is common to everyone.
Is there anyone to share your story? Any story why you end up with your position in your work and what do you want to do from now on? Okay, seems like you don't have any question this time. All right, so if you guys have a question, just email me and then I'll transmit it to Dr. Sonakshi. She may answer later. Okay, so okay, then it's 11. Oh, it's just one. Sorry about that. It's 2:15 in Fiji time. So why don't we have 10 minutes break? Now 40 minutes break, and we'll come back at 2:30, 1:30. Why don't you come back in 2:30? Is that okay? So, all right. And Dr.
Thank you.
Dr. Sonakshi, thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. I
All right,
wish you a very successful rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, everyone, we'll come back in 15 minutes. Okay, and also I recommend you think about which group of action plan presentation you want to participate. Okay, all right. See you soon then. I think it is almost ready. It's quick office. Are we ready to go? Is it good to go?
Yes, you can go ahead.
Sure. Okay. So next topic is how to manage the marine bio data. So for this session, Dr. Kyung Pak from Mavic will give us a lecture. She's an excellent female scientist in Mavic, and she's in charge of marine extract department. And so please welcome Dr. Pak. I cannot hear you.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
we can hear you now.
I'm sorry. I think something problem. So Just a little bit wait. Okay. 어떤 거요? 이 화면이요? 그러면 제가 그냥 하면 돼요? So can you see the screen?
Yes, we can see the screen.
Okay.
Yes, we can see screen.
I'm sorry. Good afternoon, Fiji. I'm Kyunghwa Baek and working at Marine Diversity Institute of Korea. I'm glad to introduce management of Bioresource Center. So marine bioresource encompass a range of organisms such as bacteria, fungi, micro and macroalgae, spongy, mollusca, other invertebrate, fish, plant, as well as compound derived from these type of organisms. Marine bioresource has the potential to feed into a number of other biotechnology and industrial sectors, such as pharmaceutical, nutraceutical, cosmetic, industrial biotechnology, and agriculture, and others. Potential product developed with the use of marine bioresource can therefore include new medicine, drug ingredient, new food, and nutritional supplement, health and beauty supplement, biomaterial, textile, and food for farm animal, but also as co-adjuvant as enhancer in many industrial and manufacturing process, improving their efficiency and reducing their environmental impact. For example, approximately 30,000 compounds originating from marine bioresource have been described, with recent discovery rate exceeding 1,000 compounds each year. Like, you know, the omega-3, chitin, chitosan, or carotenoid are the bioactive constituent examples of high value added chemical having nutraceutical potential that can be used as functional additives. Polysaccharide and, like, you know, the unsaturated fatty acid like EPA, and collagen, peptide gaining popularity and may be resulting in human health improvement by lowering the dangers of cardiovascular disease. Marine active chemicals are potential source of bioproduct with promising applications in biotechnology. So how many marine lives in the ocean? In the terrestrial, over 1 million species were cataloged, but in the ocean, almost 200,000 species were cataloged. It's almost 6 times. The ocean is wider than the land. So why is there less diversity? First, difficulty in exploration and securing species. Also, these days, biodiversity is lost faster than on land due to climate change, pollution, ocean acidification, and land-based development. So how to protect and preserve it for future? So around 1 million species face extinction in the next few decades, and 10% of the Earth's wilderness has been lost in the past 2 decades. Banks play an essential role in incentivizing, mitigating, or preventing the major drivers of biodiversity loss. So many people and many organizations, many countries, they suggest banking on biodiversity. So now World Bank, they are consider of biodiversity preservation and conservation. Bioresource Center is non-profit organization that collect, store, and contribute standard reference microorganisms, cell line, and genomes of organism. Oh no, sorry. Bioresource is non-profit organization that collect, store, and distribute standard reference microorganism, cell line, and other materials for research and essential parts of infrastructure on defining biotechnology. So BRC must meet the high standard of quality and expertise demanded by the international community of scientists and industry for the delivery of biological information and materials. For the effective and efficient quality management of Bioresource Center, there are demand compliance with national legislation, rules, and regulation. So law, policy, and standard procedure guideline, local document that's need. And especially law is mandatory and standard is not mandatory, but that is highly important when you collaborate with outside of your organization. So you already know about Nagoya Protocol. Nagoya Protocol is protocol on access to genetic resource and the fair and equitable sharing of benefit arising from their utilization to the Convention on Biological Diversity is an international agreement which aims at sharing the benefit arising from the utilization of genetic resource in fair and equitable way. It entered into force at 2014. When you get the specimen or sample from outside of your organization, you must check the permit. So permit require according to the national law. OECD suggested best practice guideline for Biological Research Center. Also, ISBER, which is Global Biobanking Organization that create opportunity for networking, education, and innovation. So recently, ISBER released the best practice for recommendation for repositories. So why we need a standard that increase the quality of sample, improve access to qualified sample, also unified policy and procedure for biobank, bioresource center, and repository. That means the stimulate access of partner from public and private sector to highly qualified sample, and also increase stockholder confidence and assurance. Finally, that makes cost reduce and contribute to protect of health and environment. So establishment and operation for Bioresource Center or Biobank. So first, we need organization, funding, objectives, steps, facility, document, and website, research and training, we need these kind of things. So first, we think about funding. So for management of BRC, BRC need support from the parents organization, maybe the national or province support need. Even the establishment of a small in-house collection requires ongoing source of direct or indirect financial support from a parent body. Step, BRC work is labor intensive. When determining the number of full and part-time positions required, it is important to consider how time-consuming the routine accession, preservation, and maintenance and quality checking will become as the BRC approach. Too frequent step turnover will jeopardize the maintenance of standards in the BRC and hence the quality and effectiveness of the service provided. And also key step manager is almost the high degree person, and then also the high quality curating skill they have to. So anyway, too frequent step turnover will very jeopardize the maintenance of BRC. Facility, that is also important. In order to minimize the risk to important genetic resource from the fire, flooding, earthquake, war,
Yes.
or catastrophe, BRC should arrange to have a duplicate of at least the most important and irreplicatable sample, and also of their associated documentation securely housed in a different building or ideally at a separate site. So this one is example of document what kind of form and what kind of record we need. Like this kind of form that is very important when you are managing of your biobank or bioresource center. And facility and equipment inspection and maintenance of facility and equipment is also important. So daily checkup, instrument, and the facility, that is important. Also keep clean. Also periodically check the status of storage equipment. All kind of this thing is important. If the equipment facility is not well maintained, the sample may deteriorate and cause customer dissatisfaction, and the same sample will never be obtained again. So security, you have to define biosecurity level of biomaterials. Also, you have to define physical security and data security. You have to define. This one is example. So we have this kind of instrument and equipment, and then we usually check up the status. And then sometimes if there is problem, we immediately call to the manufacturing company, and then also we check very quickly. We check that status. So anyway, we have to consider sample source management, sample management, workflow management and storage management, instrument management, and follow regulatory requirement, report generation, document management, and step training management. All kind of things we have to consider for management of biobank or bioresource center. So quality check is really, really important to improve organizational effectiveness and to improve customer satisfaction. Quality check is really, really important, and we have to consider following major issue, like the quality management and quality assurance system that are unified across international border. Also accuracy of the data collect and supplied, and expertise and training of marine bioresource, particular a new generation of taxonomists able to use molecular technique and information, and the sharing of expertise among center, those coordination and networking. This one is our the MABIC, how do we do management of our sample. So first we do sampling, and then we record all kind of situation, and then we preserve our sample, and then we input the data, and then a customer ask to distribute. We first check the quality and then distribute. This one is our example. So we have 4 biobank: extract biobank, genetic biobank, and bacteria biobank, and microalgae biobank. So when we got the sample, first we check the permit. If there is no problem, we extract a sample, and then we store at the we stored at the exact facility, like some kind of a refrigerator, or sometime deep freezer. We keep the sample, and if somebody customer ask to distribute, we check the quality, like the sequencing exact accuracy, or sequencing we checked, and then that is correct, we distribute. But if that is not correct, we dispose the sample, or we reject the distribution. Data quality is top concern of data integration, and high quality data will lead to knowledge for research excellence. High quality data means well organized, well documented, well preserved, and well accessible. But sometimes data quality makes some problems. So like the taxonomic data, sometimes we miss the missing data, or sometimes we miss the spell, and also sometimes we input incomplete data. So geographic location, we use different, people use different format, and some people use different missing value. And also image, think about some people use JPG file, some people use like a PNG file, some people use text file. So that makes problem. So anyways, sometime sometime if we input wrong data or misspell, then makes the like data quality reduced. This one is example in our system. So researcher or curator, they input their data and then into the Excel, and curator, they check themselves, like with in the Excel, if you perform data validation, it will be reduced up to 80%. So there is, in the Excel, there is the data validation function. So when you check the taxonomy and geographic locator with Google Map, it will be reduce the mistake. This one is our example our system. So it's example for microorganism bacteria bank. So curator input the all kind of data manually. And this one is example for our system, marine bioresource information system. We call Embrace. So there is a lot of information. So there is map location and taxonomic data and specimen or strain data, image data, utilization and sequencing data, publication, service management, storage, inventory management data, and utility tool. So Embrace, they do data capture, data validation, data migration, data enrichment, data cleaning, data verification, and then finally, if you already saw that our Embrace system, that we do that kind of data service, like the map, taxonomy, or image, sequencing data, and ordering information in there. But periodically, we improve the Embrace system. So manual input data that is very difficult and time consuming. So, and also very laborious job. So also it makes inconsistent data and duplication data. So upload system changed as periodically, and also in search engine improvement and data grouping we do. And also occasionally we matching the geographic location. With a large number of, let's go to biological information. With a large number of prokaryotic, eukaryotic genome completely sequenced and more forthcoming across to the genomic information and synthesizing it for the discovery of new knowledge have become central themes of modern biological research. Meaning the genomic information requires the use of sophisticated computational tools. It therefore becomes imperative for the new generation of biologists to initiate and familiarize with the field of study that is concerned with the careful storage, organization, and indexing of information in order to tackle the new challenges in the genomic era. As an interdisciplinary field of science, bioinformatics combines biology, computer science, information engineering, mathematics, and statistics to analyze and interpret biological data. The key areas of bioinformatics include biological database, sequence alignment, gene and promoter prediction, molecular phylogenetics, structural bioinformatics, genomics, proteomics, and metabolomics. Bioinformatics has not only become essential for basic genomic and molecular biology research, but it it is having a major impact on many areas of biotechnology and biomedical science. In the Nature Review Genetics, there is when the genome assembly through the year 2001, human sequenced the whole genome, but almost 10 years after the marine species Atlantic cod that was genome sequenced, compared to the terrestrial organism, whole genome analysis of marine organisms is very little. Why? Because of it's very difficult to analyze the whole genome sequence because of no references, less references. So still we have to do that kind of work. So in MABI, we run Marine Genome Information Center. We call MAGIC. It is still difficult to analyze the whole genome of marine organisms. We provide the genome information to researchers such as university and research institute. We have a draft genome of animal and plant and whole genome of bacteria sequence, and also metagenome data we have in the MAGIC. And this day, Korea is working on collecting scattered biodata. We expect to contribute rapidly to the new drugs and biotechnology development, and increase quality and reduce cost, and above all maintain public trust. Thank you for attention. If you have question, any question, I'm very glad to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Beck, for your excellent presentation about marine management of marine bioresources information, as well as marine bio bank. Okay, now it's Q&A session. So if you guys have any question, just let us know.
쓰지 마시고. 아니에요. 질문하면 안 되는데.
Questions? By the way, just quick reminder. Just let us know if or which group you want to join for action plan tomorrow. Okay, so then before the end of this today's workshop, I just want to announce all the participants to assign to either group, either taxonomy or some information. Okay. All right. So, any questions regarding managing biobank information or bioresources information?
지금 한 분 질문할 분이 계신데 지금 여기 전체 갑자기 로그아웃 돼가지고요. 요거로 마이크로 질문해도 될까요?
Sure. Yeah. 그렇게 해주세요.
You can use.
Thank you, ma'am, for your presentation. Good afternoon again from Fiji. My question, I'm interested to know on the time period or the duration of establishing your database.
So we prepare that database system almost over 10 years. First, we gather the data from each scientist, and then also now Mavic is almost 7 years baby kindergarten student, and so first we get the data from outside of our organization, and then we collect that data and analyze and then stored until now. And then every day the system manager, they check the system and then improvement that data system. So now that is working only Korean, but later I hope we will open to the out of our outside of organization, such as the with English version. So later, if you join to our system, you can see lots of information.
Okay. Can I add a little bit? Can I jump in? And can I a little bit? I'm a kind of data scientist. I mean, data scientist of view of developing a proper data management system takes a lot of times and money, especially for this Embassy system. As Dr. Beck said, it's developed. It has been developing about over 10 years. Still, we needed some maintenance updates periodically, and we need a proper maintenance, and we need a system update every year. So it's ongoing process. It's not gonna end in a year or two. We are still building, updating this system next 10 years. As a quick reminder, Dr. Beck said, we need an English version of this so that other outside of world, if they just can access our database system. They just want to get a loan of our just any species or some specimen kind of thing. So it's ongoing work, and yeah, that's what I want to add on. So any other question? Did we answer your question correctly?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Narisa. It's good to hear your question. Any other question? Okay.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm sorry, our internet is down and I can't seem to get my Zoom back up. But my question was, do you have a database on phytoplanktons and some kind of identification manual? A few years ago, I worked on identifying phytoplanktons, and it was a bit difficult to get a good identification manual on them.
Yeah, we have an expert for phytoplankton, but yeah, you already mentioned it is very difficult. So especially the single strain isolation is really difficult. Also, preservation is really difficult. So we use enrichment for getting single isolate. And then also we check the several kind of biomarker, and also we analyze the microscope, and also we check the some kind of mitochondrial mitochondria sequence, but anyway, it's really difficult. Yeah, I know that is really difficult, and also even preservation is really difficult. So yeah, I hope you will get. I hope you will get good phytoplankton collections.
So, Dr. Beck, do we have identification manual for this phytoplankton, or we just do ad hoc basis?
We anyway, we have single isolate, but I'm not sure about that is organic culture, but anyway, we usually use 3 or 4 primer set we use, and then we do sequence, and then when we analyze align that sequence with the database, they and also they check the microscope, and they decide that is the exact phytoplankton species. Yeah, actually, I'm not a phytoplankton expert, but anyway, usually when I ask to them, they do that kind of step.
I see. I think the biology is not that easy, not that simple. So depending on the species, organism, probably we need to combine multiple primers and then the sequence and compare to the database to figure out what this species is. Okay, any next question? Another question?
빼면 좀 나은가?
Okay, then while we are waiting for another question, so okay, let's do this way. Just wanna get your preference for action plan group. So now I can see you in all entire screen. Then I just okay. Who want to participate in first group? Taxonomy identification. Raise your hand so I can see you. No one wants to participate in the first group? Everyone wants to participate in the second group? So first group. Who wants to be part of first group? Okay, let's go then the other way. Who wants to be the second group? Is information. Okay, for the second. All right. So, Arisa, I'm looking for their name table. So I sorry. Where is she? Ends up. Okay.
Dr. Yang.
All right. So
the participants asking if you can just divide them randomly.
Randomly? Yeah, I can do that, but I just want to respect your preference. If you Penina. So do you want to be part of the second group? And also Arisma, do you want to be the part of the second group?
be part of the second group.
Okay, great. So far, Veniana and Arishima is our second group.
And there's one more for the second group.
Okay, one more. Who is she?
She's just putting her hands up.
Okay, Nanise? Is that right? Or okay, Nanise and okay, and Eleanor and okay, Vane. Do you want to be second group or no? Okay, so far I have 4 participants willing to second group is Eleanor. Sorry if I just made your name incorrectly. So Eleanor and Arishima and Veniana and Lanise. Who else?
I'll be in group 2 as well.
Who?
Elizabeth.
Elisa. Elizabeth, okay. And
Vivina.
who? Viviana. Vivina, right?
Group 1.
Vivina is group 1? Sorry, just there's a lot of echoes going on, so I just cannot hear you very clearly. So, okay. So far, Eleanor, Elisabetta, Arisma, Viniana, Nanise is second group. Who else want to be a second group? Or did I make any mistake? I need 2 more volunteers to be a second group. Otherwise, I'm gonna randomly pick. All right. No one? Okay. Or you can just. Are you just check? Oh, okay. A group 1. All right. Sorry. The thing is. Tamari Lobby want to be first group, and Marama is want to be first group, and Divina want to be. Oh no. Okay, and then Cree want to be 2. Okay. Rene went to the first group. Okay. Didn't hear back from Natalie and Vane and Lilita and Saini. Okay, group 2. Okay, great. Okay, I've got 7 participants want to be the second group. So and then I'll just assign Natalie and Lilieta and Saini to the first group. So no, did I make a mistake? Saini 1 and Natalie Ilisoni. She didn't reply yet. Oh, okay. Natalie is group 1. And what about Lilieta? Is it okay for me to assign to the first group?
Can you recount for the group 1 and group 2?
Okay. Lilieta is first group. Okay, that's good. That's great. Oh, okay. So we'll just write it up and just bring it up to the screen in shortly. Okay. While we are writing up and distributed you into 2 groups, And any question regarding biobank information and managing databases, managing information, please raise your hand and just ask me a question. And also Dr. Beck is around here, so we can answer your question in same place. Okay. Okay. Hold a second, please. Hang on, because we have to share the mics, but it should be okay. So, all right, go ahead, please. Arishma, you have any question?
Okay. Yes. My question is the sample only from Korea or other parts of the world?
Oh, okay. Good question. So originally the Embrace is designed to store domestic samples, and we have a lot of domestic samples, but we also collaborate with international research centers or countries. So, for example, we have lots of samples from Vietnam and East Timor, and also we used to have some research and development program which collect the sample from all around the world. So basically, we have lots of data. We haven't put it in the database yet, but we'll do ultimately, eventually. Okay.
Okay. So,
All right.
do you have any from Fiji?
We do not. We do not. Why don't you just give us, and we'll just, why don't you collaborate in the future? That's great. That'll be great. Any more question?
Thank you.
Thank you. So I think it's the warming up is over. So now it's just, you guys ask more question. All right. So by adding one more things in database of, I don't know, I forgot who asked the question. So database, building a good database requires a lot of professional knowledge and also a lot of organization and thinking. And also we need to consider what kind of data and what kind of data type we need to put it in. And also don't assume that once you design the database, it goes forever. You have to constantly change what kind of metadata you have to put it, and what kind of data type we have to put it, and what kind of database management system we have to use. In the beginning, you can use Excel or small, like a Microsoft database management system, but the end, eventually, the data grows. You are not able to handle that with that, simple system. So you have to buy a machine and computers, servers, and you have to get the proper database management system. And eventually you have to have an expert to deal with the data, and you have to put it in a lot of, the services such as local GPS services, and search engines, and lots of things. Okay. Okay, Benina chose the first group. I just put in the second group. I'm sorry. So Benina is second. Benina. What's the Benina? This is first group. She wanted to do. So it's a little bit unbalanced now, but let me check. Why don't you check the group assignment? Is everyone agree with this or not? It doesn't necessarily be perfectly balanced. So for me, it's
They're asking to make 7-7.
okay.
So-
So who wants to be the second group from first group?
It's okay. You can put me to group 2.
Who's talking right now? Vanilla? Oh, okay. Sorry. So Veniana, is it okay to put you into second group? Okay.
It's okay. You can put me to group
Okay. All right. Okay. Thank you very much for your cooperation. All right. This is the action plan groups for tomorrow. Okay. So why we are doing this now is from tomorrow you'll be assigned to 2 different groups, and probably in, I don't really know at this moment, in the breakout session probably you will be assigned to different frame, I think, in Zoom or some other sessions. We'll see tomorrow. Okay, by the way, anyway, this is the groups we assigned. Everyone happy?
Yes,
Okay.
everyone is
All right,
happy.
good. Okay, then any more question today? Feel free to ask. Or everyone wants to go back home early? You want to see recess this workshop, today's workshop early? Okay, then why don't we just stop today's session a little earlier, and then we'll resume tomorrow's program at 1 at Fiji local time. All right. Okay. Thank you very much, everyone, and it was really good. I eventually got several questions today, so all right. I will see you tomorrow, and enjoy all of you have a good rest of the day, and bye. All right, see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.